My mom promised my dream house to my brother and disowned me after I said no. The house is in my name. I paid for it, every dollar. And my brother has been living in it for 14 months, while my mother tells the family I'm the selfish one. I bought my house at 28. I had been saving since I was 19. 9 years. I worked 2 jobs for 6 of them. I ate rice and frozen vegetables 4 nights a week for 3 years. I drove a car with no air conditioning for 2 summers because the repair cost was money that could go into the fund. I didn't take a vacation. I didn't buy furniture. I slept on a mattress on the floor of a rented room for 4 years because every dollar that didn't go to rent or food went into the savings account. I opened the week I turned 19. The day I closed on the house, I sat in the empty living room on the floor and cried for 20 minutes. Not because I was sad, because the floor was mine. The walls were mine. Nobody gave me this. Nobody co-signed. Nobody helped. The week I moved in, I planted a garden in the backyard. My grandmother Celestine taught me to garden before she died. Tomatoes, basil, peppers, marigolds along the fence. I built a raised bed out of cedar planks I cut myself. I spent every Saturday morning in that garden for 2 years. It was the quietest place in my life. 6 months after I moved in, my brother Derek's marriage fell apart. My mother Clementine called me. She said, "Derek needs a place to stay. Just a few weeks. He can sleep in your spare room." I said yes, because he's my brother. Because a few weeks is a few weeks. Derek moved in on a Sunday. By Wednesday, his clothes were in my hallway closet. By Friday, his PlayStation was connected to my living room TV. By the second week, his kids were leaving toys in every room and eating food I bought without replacing it. A little more time became 3 months, then 6, then a year. His kids pulled up my basil. They knocked over the raised bed. They left a bicycle in the middle of my tomato plants. And when I asked Derek to move it, he said, "They're kids. Relax." At month 8, I told Derek he needed to leave. He called my mother. My mother called me within the hour. She said, "You are not putting your brother on the street." I said, "He's been here for 8 months. He doesn't pay rent. He doesn't buy groceries. His kids destroyed my garden." She said, "That garden is not more important than your family." I said, "It's my house, Mom." Then she said, "I need you to add Derek's name to the deed for security so he knows he has a home." I said, "Absolutely not." She said, "And you'd let your brother be homeless over a piece of paper?" I said, "The piece of paper is a deed to my house." The answer is no. The following Sunday was my cousin Cash's birthday dinner. 22 people at my Aunt Ilaria's house. My mother stood up in the middle of dinner and said, "I need to say something about my daughter." She said, "I raised her to put family first. When her brother needed a roof over his head, she chose a garden over her own blood." She looked at me. She said, "Until you change your mind, you are not my daughter." 22 people staring at me. Nobody said a word. Not my aunt, not my cousins, not my uncle Arjun who had borrowed money from me twice and never paid it back. I stood up. I said, "Okay." I walked out. I drove home. Derek was on my couch watching my TV. I said, "You have 30 days. He said, "Mom told me you'd come around." I said, 30 days. I'm putting it in writing." He laughed. He actually laughed. I filed a formal eviction notice the next morning. Legal, documented. Derek filed a dispute claiming an oral lease. The eviction was delayed. I hired a lawyer. My lawyer Zelda pulled the county records. She called me the next day. Her voice was careful. She said, "There's something on your title that shouldn't be there. A quitclaim deed filed 4 months ago. It added Derek's name to the title of my house. My signature was on it, except I had never signed it. I had never seen the document. My brother forged my signature on a quitclaim deed and filed it with the county and has been legally co-owner of my house for 4 months." Zelda said, "This is real estate fraud. This is a felony." I said, "Did my mother know?" She said, "The notary who witnessed the signature is listed on the document." She turned her laptop toward me. The notary's name was Patricia Delgado. She lives 3 houses down from my mother. She has been her neighbor for 11 years. My mother's neighbor notarized a forged signature on a document that stole half of my house. Derek is still in my house. He does not know I've seen the quitclaim deed. He does not know my lawyer has referred the forgery to the district attorney. My mother is hosting a barbecue at my house this Saturday. She organized it as a celebration of the family coming together. She invited the same 22 people who watched her disown me. Derek told my mother the house was theirs now. Clementine has been telling relatives I came to my senses, that the deed was added with my blessing. I have been invited. I am going. I sat across from Zelda's desk and she laid it all out. Patricia Delgado didn't deny notarizing the document. She said my mother told her I had agreed to it over the phone. My mother went to her neighbor and lied to her face so Patricia would stamp a fake signature and make it look real. Clementine didn't just let this happen. She made it happen. I said, "Could my mother face charges?" Zelda said, "If Patricia testifies that your mother presented the document and vouched for your consent, your mother is looking at conspiracy to commit real estate fraud. That's a felony." Then I opened the family group chat. Derek had posted a picture 2 days ago. My backyard. And the garden was gone. All of it. The raised bed, the soil, the marigolds, everything. He had paved over it. Gray concrete pavers laid flat where my garden used to be. A new grill and a folding table sitting on top. My grandmother's garden was under concrete. I called my closest friend Bo. I told him everything. He said, "Don't go angry. Go calm. The calmer you are, the louder the papers talk." Friday, I picked up the folder from Zelda's office. The original deed, the forged quitclaim, the notary log entry, the DA referral confirmation, everything. Zelda held it out and said, "Last chance. I can file a motion Monday and handle this through the courts." I said, "They made it public when my mother stood up at that dinner table. They made it public when 22 people watched and nobody said a word." Then she said, "One piece of advice. Don't explain. Don't argue. Hand him the documents and let the paper do the talking. The moment you start defending yourself, they make it about your tone instead of the truth." I've lived that my whole life with Clementine. Every fight ended the same way. It didn't matter what she did. It mattered how I reacted. If I raised my voice, I was disrespectful. If I cried, I was dramatic. If I was calm, I was cold. The point was never the response. The point was control. Saturday, I got dressed. Plain top, jeans. I picked up the folder and drove to my house. Cars lined up along both sides of the street. 14 at least. Music from the backyard. Laughter. In my house. In my yard. Over my grandmother's garden. I walked up my own front path. I didn't knock. I wasn't going to knock on my own front door. The house was full. Relatives in the living room, packed into the kitchen, spilling through the back door into the yard. Derek's clothes were still crammed in my hallway closet. closet, his PlayStation hooked up to my TV, his blanket bunched on my couch, my house rearranged around someone else's life like I had never lived here at all. I walked through the kitchen and out the back door, and I saw it up close for the first time. The garden was gone. Gray concrete pavers covering every inch where my garden used to be. A massive new grill in the middle of them, still with a price sticker on the side shelf. Folding tables with plastic tablecloths and paper plates. And standing right next to the grill, spatula in one hand, tongs in the other, flipping burgers like he was hosting a block party, was Derek. He saw me. His face opened into a wide grin. He lifted the spatula and waved it at me. He shouted, "There she is! Glad you came!" Loud, like an announcement, like the host welcoming a guest, like this was his house and his yard and his party. Then Clementine appeared. She came from behind a group of cousins, beaming. She walked straight to me with her arms open and wrapped them around me. She whispered in my ear, "I knew you'd come around. Family always wins." I did not hug her back. My arms stayed at my sides, the folder pressed against my ribs. I said quietly, "We need to talk." Something shifted behind her eyes. She said, "Not today. Today is about family." I said, "Yes, it is." Derek walked over, spatula in hand, grease on his fingers. He said, "You want a burger?" I said, "Derek, I need to talk to you and Mom. Inside. Now." He laughed. That same laugh from the night I said 30 days, and he sat on my couch and said, "Mom told me you'd come around." He said, "Can it wait? I'm grilling." I said, "It can't." The laugh stopped. The smile just left. We went inside. I didn't close the door. I didn't lower my voice. Relatives were already drifting closer from the living room. I set the folder on the kitchen counter and opened it. I pulled out the original deed and laid it flat. I said, "This is the deed to this house. My name. Only my name." I pulled out the forged quitclaim deed and placed it next to the original. I said, "This is a quitclaim deed filed 4 months ago, adding Derek's name. That is supposed to be my signature. I didn't sign this. I have never seen this document." Derek's face went flat. Everything fell off him like a mask hitting the floor. Clementine said, "Let's talk about this privately." 3 cousins were in the kitchen doorway. Arjun right behind them. Someone turned the music off. I pulled out the notary log entry. I said, "The notary who witnessed my supposed signature is Patricia Delgado. She lives 3 houses down from you, Mom. She told investigators that you brought her the document. She told them you said I had agreed to it over the phone." The warmth drained out of Clementine's face. She said, "Patricia said that?" I said, "Yes, and it's on record." Derek spoke. His voice was tight, thin. He said, "Mom said you were okay with it. She said you agreed but didn't want to deal with the paperwork." He turned and looked straight at Clementine. "That's what you told me. You said she said yes." Clementine didn't answer. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3. Then she said, "I did what I had to do for this family." Not a denial, not an apology. A room full of people heard her say it. I pulled out the DA referral and slid it across the counter. I said, "This is the referral to the district attorney. Real estate fraud is a felony. Forging a signature on a deed is a felony. This is all going to court." Derek picked it up. His hands were shaking. He looked at Clementine. He said, "Mom, you said this was fine. What did you do?" Clementine looked around the room. Every face was looking back at her. Then she looked at me. She said, "A real daughter wouldn't have to be asked. A real daughter would have given her brother the house without a fight. Everything I did because you were too selfish to do the right thing." The kitchen was so quiet I could hear the grill still popping outside. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I said, "I worked 2 jobs for 6 years. I ate rice 4 nights a week for 3 years. I drove a car with no air conditioning for 2 summers. I slept on a mattress on the floor for 4 years. I saved every dollar for 9 years to buy this house, and you stole it from me and called me selfish." I closed the folder. I said, "You have 72 hours to vacate Derek. If you're not out, the sheriff will remove you. The fraudulent deed is being voided by court order. This house is mine. It has always been mine." I looked at Clementine. "And I am still your daughter, but you are no longer welcome here." I walked through the kitchen, past every relative standing still with plates in their hands. Ilaria reached out and grabbed my arm. She said, "I didn't know." I looked at her hand on my arm. I said, "You were at that dinner. You watched her disown me. You didn't ask what happened. You just believed her. All of you did." I pulled my arm free. I walked out the front door of my own house. 3 weeks later, Derek was gone. He left on day 2, moved back to Clementine's house. Patricia Delgado's notary license was suspended pending investigation. The DA filed charges against Derek for forgery and fraud. Clementine hasn't been charged yet, but Patricia's statement naming her is on record. The fraudulent deed has been voided. The title is clean. Only my name. I tore up the concrete pavers myself. It took 2 full weekends. Underneath, the soil was compacted and gray, but it was still soil. I built a new raised bed out of cedar planks. I planted tomatoes, basil, peppers, and marigolds along the fence. I did it on a Saturday morning, alone, in the quiet. The garden won't look like Celestine's garden for a while, but it's mine. The house is mine. The floor is mine. And this time, nobody is taking it.